Growing up, I always heard about this imaginary place, and it was always like Sri Lanka. And I always heard about the atrocities and the war, and why my parents came there, why we were the only brown family in that community. And it never really hit me until I came to Canada, and I had the community here, the Tamil community behind me, and I saw that I wasn't the only one who heard these stories. There were actually other people my age who were like, dude, there's something going on in Sri Lanka, and our families are here because of that, and people there are dying, and it's unfair, and nobody's giving it any media coverage. And eventually I was just like, this is wrong. And it really wasn't until I got to university. Before that I gave it a little attention, but once I got to university, I felt like I was part of something bigger, and I really had to do something about it. So I was like, you know, like, my parents came here to give me a better life. And there's a lot of people over there that don't have the means to leave the country, or don't have the courage to leave the country. You know, it's hard learning a new language, and, you know, getting around in a new place. It's not always fine. And even when you are in a new place, you can't help but feel like you don't belong there, because it's not where your family's from, right? So there's definitely always that issue. So when I got to university, I really thought I need to do something about that, and hence I decided to join JHR and start my journalism.
A large majority of the Tamil people who are in Canada now sort of came in the 1980s as a result of the conflict going on in Sri Lanka. So the vast majority of course there were some people who were settled here before that, but the vast majority of Tamils in Toronto and in the rest of Canada are there because they were sort of fleeing Sri Lanka at the time in the 1980s. And so that sort of not wanting to have left Sri Lanka, but the need to, and then settling here, that sort of tied up in their identity still. Well, I've actually been focusing in political science on international relations, and on my focus is actually ethnic conflict. So I do try to do a lot of study, not just of the Tamil conflict, but of ethnic conflicts all around the world, and sort of the history and the progression, and try and understand why and how these things happen, and more importantly, how and why they can be solved, which hopefully I'll be able to put to use, and I try to put to use on this particular issue. I'm also part of the Journalists for Human Rights chapter at McGill, and it's one of the mandates of Journalists for Human Rights as journalists, to report on human rights issues. So we do try, not just for the Sri Lankan issue, but many ethnic conflicts, many wars, and really most human rights issues that go on in the world.
When you say Tamil, terrorism, no? But the thing is, I'm just generalizing it, but there's two different types of people. There's the LTTE Tamils, the supporters, whatnot, and there's people that just want freedom, just want everything to end, just want nothing to do with anyone, just want to just live peacefully. And that's what we're going to. We're sending a message saying, we're not saying Sinhalese people are bad, Sinhalese people are this and that. I have Sinhalese friends, you know, like, there's nothing about the type of people, it's just government, corruption, blah, 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 you know? So what we're trying to say is, we just want freedom. We just want a homeland that's free of anything, racism, of anything. So whenever we make songs, we try to focus also on putting ourselves out there as people that just want freedom of speech, freedom of everything, just free country. And the thing is, we don't only make tracks about Tamil people, we also make tracks of general stuff like, you know, clubbing, whatnot, because that's what we are. We have the serious side and the fun side. The serious side is about our homeland. We're still fighting for it, you know? Not fighting for it, but I mean, like, fighting to keep a peace. Because even though they say, oh, war is done and everything, there's still people getting killed there.
I think that's one of the biggest stereotypes that Tamils were trying to break, and are still trying to break. And we still sort of struggle with this perception that all of us are tigers or tiger sympathizers, and whether that's true or not, whether that's true or not of some people, it's certainly not the case for everyone, and certainly the case that people don't even really understand what the label tiger sympathizer means. And so I definitely think that that is a big part of what the Tamil community is trying to show right now, that there is a story to this conflict that is very, very much deeper and more widespread than the Tamil tigers. And we are a people who are also much more varied in our opinions and our thoughts of the conflict than just to be behind the tigers, I suppose.
I've started a lot this year, really. When I joined JHR in June, I actually contacted the blog coordinator, and I decided to write a piece about it that actually got like a lot of reviews. And this is the piece right here. It's called Untold War Stories. And you know, I was really proud of this piece. I was like, you know, I know what I'm talking about for once, even though I'm just a university student and I'm just writing what I heard, like oral accounts of people, even though I've never been to Sri Lanka. I could do this. So I started writing, and the feedback I got from it was really, really good, and I also got some pretty bad feedback from, you know, all the propaganda that's going on over there. People aren't always like very supportive of the Tamil community, like especially outside of Sri Lanka. I actually got a comment that said that you shouldn't talk about Sri Lanka if you're not in Sri Lanka, which is completely wrong, because all the people in Sri Lanka, as everybody knows, have a huge amount of propaganda that influences them. And I find that an outsider really has that point of view that he could bring.
The unfortunate thing is the Sri Lankan government has always been winning the propaganda war. There is a lot of propaganda that comes, and it is sort of helped out by this misperception and this stereotyping of all Tamils as just being Tiger supporters and Tiger sympathizers. That issue, of course, still exists, and I mean, we're slowly trying to break out of it, and we recognize that it's there, but unfortunately for many of us, we can't let that label stop us from actively trying to actually solve the actual issue that's still going on in Sri Lanka, which is the commission of war crimes, the relegation of Tamils to second-class citizens, and those issues.
War is nowhere close to being finished, no? So we're trying to send a message that we just want peace, that's it. We don't want to care about who won, who lost, we just want peace. People stop, you know, killing each other.
I think what's really important to understand is that the international system doesn't work. It doesn't account for what's going on in other countries, and countries who have the means to actually say something, they're often shut down or just they're not listened to on the international level. But Canada is a major country, and just the fact that Canada actually said something against the Sri Lankan government, like, I don't know if it was because there are 300,000 Tamils here and they want their vote, or if they genuinely wanted to make a difference after 30 years of civil war going on there. But whatever their justification was, that's fine with me, because they're actually taking a step forward to do something about it. But I would definitely like to see something more done.
I think, given, you know, Canada's role on the world stage and our reputation and history as a peacekeeper and a peacemaker, I think that was something that Canadian Tamils were trying to bring out in the government, is to tell Sri Lanka that these types of human rights abuses in war and in peacetime are not allowable, and certainly not commendable by other governments and condemnable by other governments. And I know, I mean, just recently Prime Minister Harper has said that he'll be boycotting the Commonwealth Games that are to be held in Sri Lanka if they don't take a stance and sort of fix the situation there and discuss their war crimes issues. And our Minister Barrett as well made some statements recently. So things are starting to pick up. It is something that Canadian Tamils have been lobbying for quite some time, is just for the Canadian government to recognize that these issues exist and to put some pressure on the Sri Lankan government so that we ensure that they don't feel able to get away with committing such acts. And it's not just the Sri Lankan government, but we're calling for all parties in the conflict, either side, to be brought to justice and to be accused of and tried for war crimes and be condemned if necessary.
There are countries that get international aid and international support, and whenever they have an issue with their government, and every time I see that, I find, oh well, that's great for Egypt, that's great for Libya, but what about Sri Lanka? And you know, I don't want it to end up like another Rwanda, or you know, like what happened in Cambodia in the 70s, and it's definitely what I'm fighting towards. you know, I'm just a university student. All I can do is write articles and produce media. But if that's what I can do, then I'll do it. And I find that if the entire Tamil community over here actually took that initiative, and they have, we could probably make a difference, like it was shown by the Canadian government actually saying something about this issue.
I know in the last election in Toronto, we had Tamil candidates running on every level, from school trustee all the way on upwards, city councillor, and all the different positions. I think also that sort of Tamil youth in the last couple of years have discovered their own sort of passion for advocacy. I think that a lot of Tamils in Toronto especially were so used to sort of trying to assimilate or trying to learn English, trying to sort of fit in within their Toronto or within the Canadian sort of system, that their Tamil identity kind of took a backseat to those ideals. And then finally people realized, especially with the events going on in Sri Lanka, which certainly provided a huge prod, but people did realize that it was okay to stand up and speak up about things that were going on in other parts of the world, and that certainly didn't make you any less Canadian or anything like that.
Everyone knows what's happening because their parents are always talking about it, it's always in the news, it's pretty much a part of our life, knowing what's happening back home. And those that don't know much about it are probably the ones that just don't want nothing to do with it. And of course, there's always people like that, you know? So we don't really preach them about what's happening, but we more try to preach them of how to act with it and go on with it, and how to go around it, not to make it seem like a negative thing and maybe turn into a positive thing. Like the fact that we pretty much don't have a homeland, but if you look at Toronto, if you turn left, right, you pretty much see Tamil people everywhere. And Sri Lanka, and Toronto has the biggest Tamil community outside of Sri Lanka. So we're just trying to show them that you shouldn't just listen to radio and be like, oh, we're just terrorists, people don't care about us. Show what you got and show them that you are something, and people will appreciate us and look beyond the whole Tamil tiger thing. And that's what we're trying to show them.
There's always those young people who think that they don't owe anything, but they'll come around eventually. I mean, it's an issue that was always in my life, and I'm sure it was always in their life, and eventually it's going to bother them. But the large majority of Tamils here think that they need to do something to make sure that the people in their country are taken care of, and not just that they have human rights, but they have you know, like opportunities, like to get jobs and education, and to send their kids to school and not be looked down upon just because of the fact that they speak a different language, not even because they look different. They don't look different, they just speak a different language. And that's ridiculous to me. I mean, we're in Montreal, we're in Quebec, there's two nations living together here, and just living here, I find this is the living proof that two nations can live together in the same country.
It was all a dream, you keep hurting me.